Hello, Internet. Welcome to my final review for Tokyo Ghoul Re, episode 24. I don't think it gets a title. I don't know. I never saw an episode title for it, so if anyone knows the episode title, let me know. Yeah, when we last left off, shit was going on up top. Most of the CCG were fighting the very bland, and most of the ghouls were fighting the very bland V members who are somehow even more boring than they were in the manga. And meanwhile, Yomo was fighting Uta in a fight that felt much better to me because I've read the manga, and to anime onlys I've heard it was not very good. And a much better Donato and Amon fight that hit all the right notes and was so fucking good. And yeah, then Kaneki found Furuta, and we had the cliffhanger. So yeah, before we move into my review for the final episode, just a reminder, I have my Winter 2019 straw poll in the description down below. Please review stuff, or let me know what you want me to review in January. That'll be open until the 15th of January, so you still have another couple weeks at this point. So yeah, let me know. Anyway, the first thing we see before the opening is a quick flashback of like Arima and Yoshitoki seeing a young Furuta sparring against, I think, one of the V members, the main one that Take kills and gets really no death scene whatsoever. I'll touch on the V stuff later, don't worry. And I think in the manga, well, we got a bunch of Furuta backstory much earlier, but here it just seems like it's trying to fill in the blanks far too late, which is kind of what I can say for most of Furuta's character this chapter. Before I get into more detail on that, the Furuta Kaneki fight is surprisingly good. Ghoul Re has gotten a fairly well-deserved rap for not being particularly animated. But this fight's actually fairly fluid. I mean, I keep comparing fights to this in all my reviews. But it's no Boruto, Sarada, and Chocho versus Kako from Sunday, which was fucking gorgeous. But it's not half bad. It's not a half bad fight scene. It's the most well animated this season has been, like, bar none. You know, that's not exactly saying much, but you know, it's better than nothing. Anyway, more on to the actual stuff that Ghoul is particularly good at. The character work. And given how much of or the lack thereof, because Furuta, more than anyone else, has been the biggest victim of the pacing. In the manga, we got a lot of details onto Furuta, onto, you know, how his placement in, like, the Washu hierarchy led to him to have this, like, whole, you know, complex of wanting to take over. Also had a love affair with Rize, which the anime, there's so much to the Rize stuff I'm not even gonna get into here, because it's really complicated, and you don't want to sit here all night and watch me talk about Rize. I don't want to sit here all night and talk about Rize. It's 2:30 in the morning. I don't know why I'm up this late. But anyway, given how much of Furuta's character got cut from the adaptation, he's pretty much left with being yet another personification of Kaneki's depression, which unfortunately is just not as good as Rize in that role, because Rize is Kaneki's depression at this point, and Furuta isn't quite as good at it as Rize is. He's not quite as, maybe it's either he's not quite as good at pushing Kaneki's buttons as the voice of Rize always was, or maybe Kaneki's just grown to the point where it doesn't work, you know? But either way, you know, while, you know, Furuta goes into long rants about how Kaneki's failed again and again and again, and brings up all the times he failed, when he failed to stave off his more carnal desires in eating Yamari, when he failed to save Anteku, when he failed to save his family and the Quinxes, when he failed to save the 24th Ward. And Kaneki's like, yeah, but I'm still here, and this time will be different. I'm going to make it different. And, you know, seeing Kaneki stand up to his depression is always rewarding after everything you've seen this boy been through. It's been, 4.5 years since we first met this kid? He's been through a lot. He has been through a lot. And seeing the end of his journey, even with all the issues I'll get into later on, I'm not a fan of the epilogue, I will say. It's just great to see him finally come out on top, at least with his inner demons. You know, the best moments of Ghoul have always been when a character, specifically Kaneki in most cases, really has to, like, reckon with who they are. Um, and here you go. Kaneki has finally won over his dark self. You know, he's not to blame for the dragon. That wasn't him. That was all Furuta. Even if it was Kaneki's body, Kaneki wasn't conscious in killing people. It was all Furuta's schemes, and Kaneki's finally able to accept that he's not responsible for this. Sometimes the blame isn't with you. Um, but yeah, with that, there is a random weird thing. So when the anime is going through and describing all of Kaneki's failures, it specifically shows the end of Route A, with Kaneki holding the dead Hide um, with Arima on the surface in the street. Um, and given how that did not happen in Ri's continuity, is odd. It's odd. It's an odd thing. It's. I mean, it's a blip. It's whatever, but like it's just a random thing. It would have been cool to have seen V14 animated, or at least in color, just once. Um, but then they keep fighting some more. First, I guess a weird new form. Kaneki beats a new form. Whatever, no big deal. The big thing, what might be my favorite moment in all of Ghoul, and I'm so glad that they at least got this right. I love Kaneki's speech, The Dying Furuta. It's such a perfect encapsulation of the show's themes. You know, Kaneki says in his best line in the entire series, the world isn't a mistake, it's just there. Though I am personally still partial to Manga Stream's translation, the world isn't wrong, it just is, as it ties back way back to when Kaneki and Amon, in their like first meeting, you know, argued about who was at fault for the world being wrong. And here, you know, Kaneki learns the world isn't wrong. It's just things are what they are. And that's more pessimistic than I am personally, but it's what the show is leading to. It's what makes sense for Kaneki. Kaneki has not had a good enough life to be an optimist. But still, even if I'm not the biggest fan of the translation, it's still, you know, Kaneki's journey from the depths of his personal hell into a support system, to having friends and family and people he can rely on, has always been the crux of the show's main arc. And having Kaneki finally accept the world, beyond just himself, accept the world, is one of, if not the best things the show has ever done. But that message, the world isn't wrong, it just is, represents the tone the ending should have taken. And when I get to the ending, I will lambast it for that. Before then, we have more things to lambast. The stuff with V is just bad. It wasn't particularly good in the manga, but in the anime, it's just bad. You know, stuff happens with no real rhyme or reason. There are a few fuck yeah moments, like when Takizawa saves Akira, but besides that, it's all just random and feels super inconsequential. You know, where the manga had like shots of like metaphorical like fields and stuff when Kaneki delivers his iconic speech. The anime has wrapping up the V fight there, and I guess it kind of works. You know, all Kaneki stuff about like my friends and allies and enemies works when you actually see them, I guess. But it just kind of shows that like they're always going to be second fiddle to Kaneki's story, and when you only have 12 episodes until the last 2/3, 3/4 of Ri, of course Kaneki's going to take center stage, and of course the show has always been better when Kaneki has taken center stage. And of course, my thought last week I discussed if the show would have been better if they had just cut V from the plot and made Uta and Donato the final villains for the surface people. And that all still stands. I still stand by that. But anyway, that's really the end of V and the surface plot altogether. We sit underground for the rest of it. And yeah, so the other core of the dragon is Rize. The manga explained this much earlier. It's kind of a surprise in the anime, so if you're an anime only, you're probably wondering why no one acted surprised about the fact that Rize is at the center of this fuck-all dragon. Though if you're a complete anime only, you're probably still wondering why Rize is alive, but that's my other videos will go into detail on that. You can find them somewhere. I forget which one. So the monologue on the way to Rize about like I will continue to choose and be chosen is definitely the lesser of Kaneki's two big speeches. It's still good. It still shows who Kaneki is as a person. But it doesn't hold up to the world isn't wrong. It just is. It's my favorite Ghoul quote of all time. Um, I will say the decision to make Rize Kaneki's final enemy is a really good one. You know, Kaneki's biggest enemy has never been a person, has always been the demons in himself. And Rize has spent so long being the demon inside himself that having Rize be his final foe is really the only logical choice. So props to that one. That's all Ishida. That's not the anime whatsoever. But anyway, after Kaneki finally kills Rize once and for all this time, as he's leaving, the dragon is collapsing around him, and he's swallowed up um by the collapsing Kagane all around him. And I actually like the drowning scene better here than in the manga. In the manga, it felt like a huge fake out. You know, oh, Kaneki's totally dead. Maybe Ayato got him out, but not likely. Whereas the anime for one thing shows us Ayato looking for him before we move to the flash forward, and the whole scene where he like looks to his friends and then sees the light felt more uplifting than in the manga, where it felt almost like that was him accepting his death and dying for people, in which is not really a good message, but not what Kaneki needs to be doing. It's what Kaneki's been trying to do for 6 years of manga stuff, only 48 episodes of the anime, but whatever. And it has always been the wrong answer. So I did like it. The anime goes into even less detail in the manga about how Kaneki got out, but we see Ayato looking for him, so it's all kind of implied that it's Ayato that got him out. But then we go 6 years later, and the two bits of the epilogue Endless Positivity I am absolutely okay with is Shinohara's back. When I first read that in the manga, you can find my video. I couldn't fucking believe I got to see the day where Shinohara was alive and awake and gets to see his son again, and it's so fucking sweet. So fucking sweet. And also, Shirazu's sister is okay. Thanks to all of these advances in medical technology, Shirazu's sister is now back to being a normal teenage girl, or however old she is. It's 6 years later at this point, so she might be like in her 20s. I don't know. I don't remember much about his sister. And with that, we see Hide is walking through town. He sees a bunch of past characters. Naki and Misa have a bunch of kids, which neither of them are really expanded on in the anime. So, and they only probably don't give too much shit about that. But I was a big Naki Misa shipper in the manga, so I was big for that. And yeah, they go to Kaneki's house, and they see his daughter playing with Yomo. And we see Toka and Kaneki as adults. And they all lived happily ever after. And that's the end of Ghoul. That's how Tokyo Ghoul ends. Oof. Feels even more real than it did when the manga ended. Now, where do I begin with this episode? It had a lot of issues. You know, it tried to shoehorn in months of further development into like maybe a minute or two, and it also had everything with V, but somehow it still felt great. At least before honestly, the epilogue wasn't even that bad. Part of that was, of course, the Kaneki speech. The world isn't a mistake. It's just there is the actual line in the anime. Which is amazing and the perfect capstone to the years-long arc of Kaneki's growth. Which definitely like bolstered the weaker V material, as the Kaneki material was known to do. Or in general, focusing on characters that you developed is better than focusing on characters that came out of nowhere. That's just a general storytelling rule for any of you aspiring writers in my audience. Focus on characters you've developed, or develop characters. But yeah, then we have to contend with the epilogue, which months later, I just don't like. I don't think it works with the rest of Ghoul. Now, don't get me wrong, a large part of me is still happy just to see everyone happy. And I actually think that the kind of like passing cameos of a bunch of the minor characters is better than the manga's version of giving us like a documentary style ending for every like the credits of like a biopic for every single character. That was a little much, especially when it was every single character down to like the most minor people besides Amon and Akira who get nothing. That's something that's always going to bother me. Um, so yeah, it's better than better than the manga's version. It's one of the few things that is better than the manga's version this season. It's like the Kaneki Toka sex scene, and then the epilogue is really it, and maybe the drowning scene. I'll have to go back and read the drowning scene again in the manga at some time. But my problem with it is that, especially in the anime, Kaneki just got through laying out the whole points of the show as the world is neither good nor evil. It's just neutral. It just is. It's just there. It's up to us to like contend with that. And the show spent so long showing the problems of like ghoul human peace that for the show to just kind of hand wave and be like, nope, everything's good, no problems ever come up, seems counter to the 47 episodes that came before, the 330 chapters that came before. It's just counter to everything. I have heard some defenses, I will say, of the epilogue, that like the extreme happiness and upliftingness is meant as a counter to the intense despair of the original manga's ending. But I understand that from like a literary standpoint, but if that's what Ishida was going for, he should have gone towards that from the beginning of Re, or at least sometime before the last chapter. 178, the chapter before this one, for the epilogue. I'm getting my manga knowledge now, sorry. Is, and Kaneki seemingly dead in the ruins of Rize's Kagane. It still is, just is. It still just is. And so to go from that to everyone lived happily ever after, it just doesn't quite add up with what the show has given us up to now. And whatever. I've talked about this. This is my third time talking about this scene. You know my thoughts, or you should know my thoughts by now. I'm not the biggest fan of the epilogue. I think it doesn't really fit in with the story before it. But whatever. It happened. I moved on. And now, that's Ghoul. Where do I begin with this season? It's a mess, first of all, that in no way should have worked half as well as it did. And it didn't really work anyway. But the fact that it made even a lick of sense is incredible, given the utterly insane constraints put on them by those bastards at Shueisha. Put 130 chapters into 12 episodes? It's just tragic that a series as great as Ghoul will forever be marred by that. But that's the way things are. That's what happened. I guess our only hope is that 20 years from now, Shueisha takes mercy on us and gives us the Ghoul we were meant to have. Because, I'm not a big fan of Ishida's art style in general, and so reading the manga and all of its scratchy lines, I'm not a big fan of that. So I'd much rather have a clean anime that's like, oh yeah, I know what's going on there. But yeah, the only way to really discuss this season is to talk about the pacing. Even more than it absolutely overshadowed the story to an unacceptable degree. And like, if this were just a bad show, I could just not care. You've noticed I've stopped reviewing Goblin Slayer. I don't care about Goblin Slayer. It's just it's an objectively boring and bad show, so I don't care. Ghoul is a great show. Ghoul is a great story with some great themes at its core about like what it means to be human and what the world is, and what it's a show that also has a deep hope that people at their core are good. That peace is possible. That sure, we may be buried underneath, decades, centuries, generations of intense prejudices, but if you tear that all back, people aren't bad, And it's a message that we need. It's a good message to have, especially in a world as cold and callous as today's world. It's good to know that like there are good people in the world, and sometimes bad things happen to them, but good people still fight on through the bad things, as we see Kaneki do at the end here. And to see a story like that marred like this, it breaks my heart. It really does. That's what I'm more upset about, even more than the epilogue. That segues into my final point of the night. 20 minutes in, sorry. Where do I begin with this show? Ghoul is incredible. Ghoul is so good. It's got its issues. Sui Ishida cannot write a queer character to save his life. But like, Kaneki is one of those great characters that is kind of, I feel like, been ruined by or not ruined, but kind of been ignored by the greater anime community's unfair hatred of Route A. I'm a huge Route A apologist. I still think it's the best season. And that kind of made everyone not like no one really thinks about Kaneki as like one of those great anime protagonists, but he really is. His growth from shy bookworm to depressed fighter to finally like peaceful family man is one of the best developments in anime, I'd say. There aren't a lot of character developments I can think of that are better than Ken Kaneki. His journey is long and winding, but he finds happiness. And I know I spent a while rambling on about the problems with the epilogue's intense happiness, but I still think Kaneki should have found something. I don't think that Kaneki should have lived a life of misery. I felt like Kaneki should have like struggled but found happiness, and continued to struggle to find happiness, because that's his theme. That's his belief that like life just is, but like you can make something good out of it. You can find friends, you can find allies, you can find people who care about you. And having the end be like, oh, Kaneki, nothing bad ever happened to him again. He deserves it. He deserves nothing bad to ever happen to him again, but it doesn't quite feel genuine to the world Sui Ishida spent so long crafting. And it certainly does feel like the manga got canceled, and that's what led to this in a way. But it's weird for a manga to get canceled so late in its story. It was ending anyway, so why bother canceling it? I don't know what happened to Late Ghoul. I'm gonna blame Shueisha anyway, because I'm mad at Shueisha right now for this fucking season. But yeah, I have nothing else to say. I love Ghoul. I even don't hate this season. I hate Shueisha right now. They're fucking assholes. I hate them. But yeah, this is really it for Ghoul. So if you, for whatever reason, enjoyed listening to me speak, I have tons of other channels, tons of other video series for you to check out. Doing anime reviews for Boruto, for Fairy Tail, I finally started doing SAO. I have manga reviews for like Fire Brigade, which has an anime coming up, for Boruto again, for Fairy Tail again, for Eden Zero, for Blue Exorcist, for School Live, there's one more, I feel like, Black Butler. That's my big cash cow. Hello. So if you want to check those out, those will all be in my channel. You can subscribe. Will be either here or here, somewhere at the top. I don't remember where. Anyway, but yeah, if you want to do that, you can do that. And I'm gonna leave this series off here. Hope you all enjoyed the episode and the video and the show. It's over, y'all. Ghoul is over. And if you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe or fill out that straw poll. Let me know what you want to see me do next season after now that Ghoul's done. Or do whatever you want. I don't really care. Actually, that's a lie. I do deeply care. I definitely want you to stick around because I love having viewers. But yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna leave this off here. So as always, people, fuck Shueisha.